Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We are broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios. If you're just joining us, the number is 651-289-4488. And Tony,
call us and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and we've been talking about the area of this new law with Florida.
In Florida, about homeowner associations having the ability now to collect rent directly from the tenant of a delinquent homeowner.
Okay. But it looks like we have a Bob who's on.
We have a call?
Yeah, from on line 1 from Minneapolis. Let's go ahead. Good morning, Bob. You're on the air with Gene and Tony.
Those of us who have no background in the law, but 50 years ago I was a surveyor for a while, and my reference...
Oh, excuse me, Bob. We just caught you just in the middle of that. Could you start again, please?
Yes, I was just saying my perspective is as a surveyor many years ago.
Oh, okay.
I had no background in law. But what I'm puzzled about is essentially legal. Who is fundamentally under the Constitution, under the statute of frauds, under the common law? The owner. Is it the so-called owner-occupant, or is it the association? And if a contract exists between the association and the owner-occupant, then the terms of that contract cannot be changed by a legislative body to deny the rights of one party. And I wonder if I'm making any sense. If not, I could elaborate, but you folks have...
Please elaborate a little bit more, because I think...
Are you talking about the landlord-tenant issue in Florida?
Well, this is a little different than landlord-tenant.
Yeah.
The landlord, there's no question that the landlord owns the property in fee simple absolute,
All right.
not subject to a prior legal agreement with a so-called townhouse association.
Okay.
And the issue is ownership in fee simple absolute. That's a legal term that only one surveyors are familiar with.
Well, okay. Well, and
mortgage brokers.
And let me explain. This is, of course, how it was explained to me from real estate school many years ago too. If someone takes a look at property ownership, they take a look at it as a bundle of rights, and in that bundle might be one stick, which is quiet use and enjoyment of the property. Another one is the ability, because it's yours, to make improvements. Another one is to mortgage that property.
Another one
because
is to
of
rent
value, to rent it out.
To lease out your property.
And there are a lot of rights that you have when you buy property, and I agree with you.
And restraints.
Yes. However,
Yes.
when a person purchases in a homeowners association, they are waiving certain rights, and some of those rights are what is described and what they agree to in the contract when they purchase a property in a homeowners association. So, and one of those is that the governing, what you'll usually find is that either the governing documents or it'll make mention of the state statute shall prevail.
Yes, but can the state alter those terms by legislation? It seems to me very one-sided.
Well, yes, I believe the state can alter those terms. However, most of the legislation, for example, Kiowa, which was passed in
96?
96? In 96?
The current form.
Yeah. Will defer to original governing documents and allow associations to opt into new legislation or not.
That's a common law.
In some cases.
But it's true, Tony, even in rentals, too, that it will always, the state statute refers to either the contract agreement between the renter and the landlord or the homeowner and the association.
The governing documents.
But where that contract is silent, the state statute does prevail.
That's right.
Well, it's very confusing to me. I'm not in an association, and I've never studied law, but it seems to me that either the association or the occupant of the property is the owner, and that particular person has a contract with the other.
Well, here, let me explain it this way. The owner owns a specific piece of the real estate, and you'll find some governing documents that actually say, as the condominium owner, you own from the sheetrock in your unit.
And you allow the association to have certain controls and
because the rest of the real estate is owned in common with all of your neighbors.
Oh, I see.
So your homeowners association governs that because they're representing all of the members.
Oh, I tell you, it's very confusing to me, but my sense of smell, rather than any intellectual capability, tells me that the Florida legislature exceeded its limit.
Well,
That's really interesting, Bob. And I'll tell you what, you're not the only person confused. Many homeowners within homeowners associations are confused by this because they are not well educated before they buy.
Well, I wouldn't touch an association with a 10-foot pole unless I was living in a tent at 30
Bob,
below zero.
Bob, don't hold
That's
back.
good.
Tell us what you really think.
That's
here.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
calling.
Bob. And Bob, please remember, good management makes all the difference.
Yeah. Some good thoughts.
Absolutely.
From Bob.
And he illustrates perfectly what's confusing about this type of ownership. Here he is. He's a real estate professional, and it's still unclear to him exactly what goes on. And we're defining these things all the time. We're trying to explain these things all the time.
Yeah.
The legislatures get in there and stir up the waters again, and then we all kind of wait for things to settle to figure out how it's going to affect us.
And I think the thing that I think Bob probably agrees with is sometimes there's just too many cooks.
Yes. Yes.
That are stirring the pot.
I've actually described community associations or homeowner associations as communal living, and a lot of people don't like to hear that because that harkens back to the hippie days when people lived in communes and lived off rice and beans and walked around barefoot, I guess. But it really is a commune.
That's a good picture of that.
You get that picture? Yeah. Does it sound like I've experienced that before? You own real estate in common, communally, and that's what makes all the difference.
Yes, it does. Well, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this topic? 651-289-4488. But I tell you what, let's move forward with another topic, and this is one that I wanted us to touch on here. We'll see how much we can cover here today. And this is the idea now that FHA is dealing with the area of flipping houses as a benefit and a way towards a stable and growing housing market.
That term flipping has a very negative connotation, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it does. I mean, there's that reality TV show, Flipping Out, about someone who's been he flips out with his
staff,
with staff that he works with, but and with dealing with homes, and then turning around selling them. And here's the article, and this is out of the St. Petersburg Times, just a couple days ago on January 13th. Washington, it says, when you hear that the Obama administration plans to extend a policy that allows low down payment financing of flipped houses for 2011, your first reaction might be, no way. At this stage of the boom to bust to recover cycle, is high leverage house flipping the type of activity the federal government should be encouraging. And here's the case that we're dealing with here, pure and simple, and that is that FHA financing, for those that are familiar, is supposed to be encouraging first-time home buyers to purchase a home and be able to with little money down. And
That's
I think
right.
it's about 3%.
The federal agencies guarantee that loan to the lender. So
and
with small amounts down.
Exactly. And there's a mortgage insurance premium, an insurance policy in place that allows the government to be able to do that.
Yes.
So because the person doesn't have a lot of skin in the game, then they're able to take this person on as a risk. Well, what's happened is because of this economy, as of the last couple years, with there being a downturn in people purchasing real estate with foreclosures on the rise, again, just as we were talking about, I guess good-intentioned legislators do what they do best, and that's legislate. And so they wanted to come up with what they thought was the cause reason for this happening, and that was you had too many people that were just greedy flippers, and so they're flipping houses, making money quickly, and so they came up with a law that said if you are going to buy a home, you're a first-time home buyer and you want FHA money, we're not going to give you a loan if you are purchasing a home from someone who's owned it for less than 90 days. Is that
kind of that's it? Let me tell you how I read this article. The first legislation was trying to deal with the fact that investors were flipping homes and making huge profits without ever putting in any improvements in that home. And we had that happen. That's what was happening. And we've had that happen in North Minneapolis. We've been dealing with that a lot in all neighborhoods now. A flipper comes in, buys a house for $100,000, walks across the hall and closes with a buyer for $125,000 without ever putting a dime in that house, without ever improving that house. That's the negative connotation of flipping. So in order to prevent that, the government said, if you, Mr. Buyer, want FHA financing, you can only purchase a home with an FHA loan if that seller owned it for 90 days or more.
Exactly.
Because they're trying to discourage the flippers from quickly turning over those houses, the con artist flippers.
Yep.
So it restricted the borrowing ability of the buyer.
Yeah, I agree. I think we were saying the same thing.
Were we? Okay,
yes.
All right.
But and I think something that we...
they weren't controlling... The thing is, the legislation didn't control the seller.
No,
the legislation controlled the buyer.
They were controlling the seller through the buyer because they said ultimately, buyer, we're not going to give
They're saying, seller, you cannot sell this house to an FHA borrower because you haven't owned it 90 days.
And the problem that I have is that here they are trying to control a market instead of allowing
the market to control
a free market to prevail. And I'd like to go on about that, but we've got to take another break and then join us for our last segment as we wrap up this idea of FHA allowing house flipping to take place. More after this.